dober dan means good day. This is TalkCast PDX. Find us on the web, talkcastpdx.com. It's Tuesday. It's always Tuesday, but it's Tuesday, October 5th, 2021. Name of the show is the Bogdanich Perspective. I'm your host, Paul Bogdanich, and welcome. Coming into the studio this morning, it's raining. It's the early part of October, and this is Portland, and the weather has been much brighter than it has been over the last 8 years, but this winter's shaping up to be a little more normal. And normal in Portland is from the middle of October until about June. You never see a shadow. You know, it rains all the time and everything else. And I was coming into the studio, and one of the street artists found a fire plug that was sitting up above the concrete for the sidewalk, probably about 6 inches. And he obviously got one of the sunny days, and he painted in black flat spray paint the shadow of the fire plug on the sidewalk. And standing there in the pouring ass rain, you know, it was nice. It was interesting. Anyway, interesting week in the stock markets last week. I read the press. You know, when I came in yesterday or whatever, I read the press on last Thursday when they supposedly did a debt ceiling deal. And then I read the particulars later. And when I read the press, I thought I got the impression that they had solved the problem to December. But when I read the particulars, all they did was do some kind of an extension to the end of October. They have to work with it on another 2 weeks or so. And that was last Thursday, the 30th of September. And also on last Thursday, the markets fell 1.2%. to 4308, and that is below the 100-day moving average, or was below the 100-day moving average. And that's the first time that the S&P 500 index has gone below the 100-day moving average since October of 2020. It recovered 50 points on Friday, so it was back above the 50-day moving average on Friday. But yesterday, it fell 2.some% and closed 4,300, which is below the 100-day moving average. Going to go with a couple of graphs. If you could put up graph number 1, please, Justin. This is the same one that I've been showing for the last 3 weeks. It's just the S&P 500 daily closing prices from January 2nd, 2018, and this one runs through yesterday. So the thing to notice, it's just the big drop in the middle is the pandemic drop. After the pandemic drop, the market had, before the last couple of weeks, had been going up in a channel. Channel is 30% per year. And we're going to expand on the channel lines portion. If you could put up graph number 2, please. Okay, graph number 2 is just the same graph as before, only it only runs from September 1st, 2020 to the end of this year. And if you look on the left-hand side of the graph, you can see where the last time the market broke the 100-day moving average on the, fell below that. And that was in October of 2020. It actually started on September 28th. And then, October 29th is the last time it moved below. But the thing to notice is look at the recovery pattern. Okay, that time. It fell below on the 28th. It went back above a little bit on the 29th. It fell back below on the 30th. And this is all of October in 2020. And then it was below on the following Monday, which was November 2nd. 2020, and then by November 6th, which was the Friday of that week, it recovered all the way into the channel. But it's a pretty clean move down, and then a very swift and rapid move back up into the channel. Okay, that's what happened last time. And if we could go from graph 2 to graph 3, and this is just expanding with what's happening this time. All right. It's got all the call outs on here. The material thing in this graph and last graph is, see that little dotted line? All right, the market fell below and then it went back above, then it fell below, then, and so on. And it's been choppier and trying to recover and then falling back down. And so this movement below the 50-day moving average, but above the 100-day moving average, has been protracted by comparison to the last time. Lasted almost 2 weeks. But see that dotted line in there? That's the support level. All right, that's 43.57, so I'll call it 43.60. And the market fell well below that yesterday, which was that line going down. But this morning, it's back up at that support level. Not above it, but I mean, they moved it back up to that support level. And that is apparently the support level, so call it, 43.60. 43.57, something of that nature. But it's bouncing back and forth. They're trying to keep it above. It was, like I said, on the open this morning, it moved back above. Yesterday was a down day. In between the combination of last Thursday and Friday, and then yesterday, just as an aside, I had the opportunity to renew my Costco and Lynn puts at a pretty good profit for me. It's not a profit, but it's a reduction of basis. But so I did that, so I don't have anything being called away anymore until November. But that's getting ahead of myself. And that's, if you could pull that graph down, Justin. So what I want to talk about is what. All right. So we've seen what they did in 2020. Preliminarily, we're seeing what they're doing in 2021 with this little market downturn. They're supporting 43.60. What's different in between 2020 and 2021? For starters, the market move at the end of 2020 below the 100 DMA was October 30th to November 2nd, which is after earnings reports, or the bulk of earnings reports. This time, our market soft patch is happening prior to, all right, the corporate earnings reports for the quarter ended September 30th. That's a very big distinction. As I said last week, I think the political situation is different. And I also think the risk to the generalized economic conditions are different. But before moving on, I just want to look very quickly at when the corporations report. As I've talked about repeatedly, the top 30 corporations in the S&P 500 have over 50% of the market value of the entire S&P. We have two portfolios that demonstrate the top 30, so I only pulled out the reporting dates for the top 30, but it's emblematic. Okay, they start next week, the week of October, the week beginning October 11th. From our top 30 portfolio, J.P. Morgan, Bank of America, and United Health report next week. Typically next week, broader market for things not in our portfolio, J.P. Morgan Stanley reports, Goldman Sachs reports, Citibank, and etc. Next week is a big your insurance companies. Next week is a big financial reporting week. The week after that, the week beginning October 18th, from our portfolio, we have Tesla, Johnson & Johnson, Procter & Gamble, Netflix, Verizon, Abbott Laboratories, and AT&T. So it's a mix of consumer discretionary and industrials and things of that nature typically report the second week. So the week beginning October 18th. The week after that is the heavy week. The week beginning October 25th. From our portfolio, we have Apple, Microsoft, Google, Berkshire Hathaway, Visa, MasterCard, Comcast, ExxonMobil, Coca-Cola, and Intel. All right. So the tech companies, the most valuable companies, Microsoft, Apple, et cetera, et cetera. The week following that, which would be November 1st, you have Amazon, Facebook, and PayPal. And then companies that report thereafter because of an odd schedule on their part: NVIDIA, Walmart, Home Depot, Disney, Adobe, Cisco, and Nike. Okay. But the point is, starting next week, the earnings reports start, and then they get heavier the week after, and then they get really heavy the week after that, and then they start to taper off. I said what's different this year is we have three risks: political risk, inflation, and generalized decrease from economic activity. The generalized decrease from economic activity has two components, regrettably. A couple of the COVID wave that's happening. I use a data set that is fully parsed and verified, but it takes a month for it to become final because they argue about dates of death and all the rest of the stuff. But by the time I get it, it's final. And so the last week that I have was September 4th. And on September 4th, COVID is the leading cause of death in the United States. 2,000 deaths a day. Heart disease is behind that at 1,900 deaths a day. The people who watch the provisional data, more real time but less accurate, have been putting out reports that this COVID wave peaked on or about September 13th. We'll see that, but that's one area that could cause generalized economic decline. Okay. The other two are inflation in the supply chain. Not enough things to sell, not in time, and then the higher cost, okay? Those are going to come out in the corporate earnings reports. The quantification of how serious and long-lasting those two effects are going to be is what's going to be discussed on these corporate earnings reports according to that schedule I gave you. And I think these things put downward pressure on the market in between now and call it the end of the month. I think it's going to be choppy. I think they have a support level at 43.60. Yeah. I think they'll try and defend that. They may not be able to, depending on. I expect that the corporate profits for the quarter ended September 30th, the past activity will be good. They'd better be. All right, let's put it that way. It's already priced in that they will be. So, but where we'll get into problems is when they have their earnings call, they talk about forward guidance. All companies talk about the next quarter. Most companies talk about to the end of the year. In this particular reporting cycle, those are the same date, December 31st. A lot of companies use the opportunity of this quarter to roll out their 2022 projections. But I think that those projections are supply shortages and so on, right? And I think they're going to quantify that. In years past, many years past, when you ran into a situation like this, you always had some idiot at some corporation that did what was called a pre-release or an advance. They would put out a press release that says, we're not going to make earnings, our earnings estimates are going to be below or something. They'd put out an unaudited warning before the conference call. Really stupid thing to do, okay? In the markets, what happens when you do that is they punish you on your pre-release and then they punish you again, when you come out and you report the results. So it's as dumb as a box of rocks. I'm glad to see that I haven't seen any of that yet, but I'm sure there's some dope out there. Hopefully in a small company, but some of the industry associations are starting to soften up the audience. Let them know what to expect. In particular, the restaurant guys. One of the national associations polled 4,000 of their constituent restaurants. 78% of the 4,000 reported lower demand in the third quarter this year than in 2020. 91% reported higher costs of food. 84% reported higher costs of labor. 63% reported higher costs of occupancy. And 95% reported at least some experience with supply chain disruptions or shortages. So restaurants and things like that, it depends. But restaurants don't look to be set to have good reports. We'll see how that translates into food at home, beverages, and so on. It's unclear. We have to wait for the reports. But I think the earnings pressure from discussing inflation and these supply chain shortages is going to be a downward force in between here and the end of October. And then the COVID thing. Okay, that brings us to my other big risk, which is political incompetence. I've been talking about this for a couple weeks. Last week, I was trying to make a point, and I said something about how on the debt limit, if one rational person in one party came to the other person in the other party and said, let's just do a debt limit deal, that the other person would say, well, you still haven't apologized to me for the crude remark you made at the correspondence dinner in 2005. That they fight like an old married couple. And I thought I was being a little bit dramatic, hopefully funny, over the top, right? Yeah, far from it. All right. So, as I say, when you get into particulars, they still haven't done a debt limit deal. They have to take it up again within the next 2 weeks. The president and Pelosi and Schumer are trying to blame it on McConnell. McConnell released a letter yesterday. Okay. It was written up in the press. It went to the president. Senate Minority Leader McConnell released a letter to the president. The articles that were written up on it were just terrible. They didn't. They reflected what their narrative was rather than what he said. But I went and got his letter, which he posted on Twitter. By the way, it's also available on his website, which is where I got it. But anyway, the paragraphs from the letter read like this. A couple of paragraphs. And it's a very short letter. It's about a page long, if you put it all on one page. These guys use huge margins and all the rest of this stuff. But anyway, it's about a page long. 2 paragraphs go like this. Bipartisanship is not a light switch that Speaker Pelosi and Leader Schumer may flip on to borrow money and then flip off to spend it. The Republican position is simple. We have no list of demands. For 2.5 months, we have simply warned that if your party wishes to govern alone, it must handle the debt limit alone as well. As you know from shared Senate experience, this is not unusual. The debt limit is often a partisan vote in times of unified government. In 2003, 2004, and 2006, Mr. President, you joined Senate Democrats in opposing debt limit increases and made Republicans do it ourselves. You explained on the Senate floor that your no vote did not mean that you wanted the majority to let the country default, but rather that the president's party had to take responsibility for a policy agenda that you opposed. Your view then is our view now, unquote. Anyway, in 2003, 2004, and 2006, you did this. I'd say it's comical if it weren't so serious. But the political dysfunction has other consequences. I already mentioned how, in their infinite wisdom, they cut off the poorest Americans from all their pandemic and other special aid that they were getting cold turkey on September 2nd. And how, in my opinion, as time goes on, that situation becomes increasingly desperate and it affects generalized economic activity. I think that's a mistake. But we'll see, how bad it hurts. If you look at what they've been doing as a pattern, they do it as a pattern. They do it on everything. Okay. They need to be removed. They really do, to save ourselves. All right. But that's not going to happen. So the system's going to have some severe problems. They abrogate their decision making to quote unquote experts on almost every issue. The best example is this medical issue. Trump is the most guilty of this. But when Biden comes in, he follows the exact same playbook in spades. They abrogate their political responsibility to, quote unquote, a class of experts. In this case, the CDC, and they let them take control. They didn't insist that studies be done on long-term toxicity, high zone tolerance, just a variety of different things. It didn't insist on any extra monitoring, so they still don't know where they are, because they didn't, when they gave these guys the go-ahead, they didn't even have the brains to say, okay, if you're going to do that, then we want this series of rigorous tests and we want those results. They abrogated their responsibility. They do it on everything. All right, but when they did it on the COVID thing, what Fauci and all the rest of these people were telling him is this is last year, got to remember, all right, that this thing's going to kill a lot of people. If you don't do something now, they're going to blame the deaths on you and your political career will be over. So follow us. We'll do this vaccine again. Also in October of last year, the mood was more hopeful because we had the vaccine coming. All right, in December of that year. All right, and they have been following this up with, if you say anything other than the vaccines are completely effective and completely safe, then you're reducing the vaccination rates. That's going to increase deaths, and that will end your political career. And these guys are running scared in that direction. Okay, obviously. But it's been a year. Well, it hasn't been a year. It's been 10 months. Turns out the vaccines do not create immunity. They have they reduce deaths. They lessen symptoms if you do catch the disease, but even vaccinated, you can still get the disease and transmit it. So they're not a vaccine. They're a medicine. All right. And it's been a bust and they don't know what to do. They're suffering a fourth wave where it's the leading cause of death in October. Flu season runs in between December and February, right? All right, so if we have another flu season this year and this vaccine doesn't protect you from catching the virus or spreading the virus, it's going to cause, it threatens to cause decreased economic activity over that period and possible panic. Anyway, I think the political thing and these guys just not knowing what to do, if you look at the president's agenda for what he is trying to do, that this debt ceiling thing is all wrapped up in, it's fanciful, in my view. This oil leak off the California coast was most probably caused by a container ship that couldn't get into port, dropping its anchor in the wrong place and damaging the pipeline. And these guys are sitting here talking about rebuilding better and a new America and all this horse shit. Excuse my language, because they don't know what to do. How about a task force on the ports and the shipping and the supply shortages? Instead of sitting here having a giant circle jerk, with anyway, I think the political situation is going to hurt us. I don't trust the market. In between now and the end of February, I'm 68% in cash and the rest of my portfolio is hedged. I don't think they maintain this support level into the earnings season, but we'll see. They would have to overtly spend to do it. So we'll see whether they do. And that's another thing, by the way, speaking of political shenanigans. All right, Biden can only concentrate on one thing at a time, apparently. Fed Chairman Powell's term ends in February. By this time, September 30th, last week, they should have either renominated him or proposed somebody else so that the person, whoever it is, or Powell, can get through the Senate confirmation hearings before his term expires in February. They haven't done it. All right, you got Senator Elizabeth Warren. Okay, first she came out again. It's talking all the time. The Fed is a culture of corruption. Well, what did you expect, Miss Warren? It's populated by bankers. Duh. All right. That's the first thing. All right. Second thing, this is scandalous. You ought to know on the insider. She's referred them for the insider trading to the Justice Department. And all I can say is you ought to know, Senator. All right. Who it's legal to do insider trading for. Did you refer Paul Pelosi and Nancy Pelosi and their stock trades in the same letter? Or are you just sitting there grandstanding? Right. And in my opinion, she's sitting there grandstanding. She's going to kill the nomination. Biden's going to nominate somebody. If they don't get through if he tries to go with a politically pretty nominee. It may not get through the confirmation hearing. Then you're stuck without a chairman in this market support. It's a house of cards. I want to know who's in charge of card maintenance, right? What are their policies going to be? Are they going to support this market, or am I going to lose my savings? You built a house of cards, you destroyed the bond market, you forced me into the stock market. It's starting to have trouble because of earnings and other things beyond your control. Are you going to support me? Right? Is the question. I don't know if they will. I think they're very incompetent. I worry about it, obviously. Anyway, one other thing. This is news that you should have read, but didn't because the press didn't cover it. The Chinese and American militaries, general grade officers, had a large conference where they talked to each other. After said conference, presumably what they should have been discussing is a new nuclear arms treaty. The old ones were negotiated exclusively in between the Soviet Union and the United States. Now you have Russia and the United States, but we have to include the Chinese in any forward-looking reduction or limitations talks. And so hopefully that was the main agenda item. They didn't say, but hopefully that was. But then they also discuss other things, Taiwan, the South China Sea. After these lengthy meetings in between these high-ranking officials, the Chinese Defense Ministry came out with a statement. And the statement reads, or the part of the statement reads, the military relationship has faced many difficulties and challenges, and we look forward to continuing cooperation in this most important area. But the U.S. has serious issues with its self-awareness, its perception of China, and its understanding of the world today, which is the root cause of the difficulties in the relationship between our militaries. Then the statement went on to praise the progress that had already been made, express a lot of hope for continuing coordination in the future, and was very nice, after that part. But the U.S. has serious issues with its self-awareness and its understanding of the world today. That's the root cause of the problems we're having. I completely agree. I think our politicians still think that it's 1990. I think that they're incapable of making the country just taking care of the nuts and bolts. If you, in a regional setting, picking up the trash, just stuff. Making sure the water system. They can't even do that. They sit there and they dream these grand plans and they fob everything off on experts who do terrible, and then they don't hold anybody accountable. And I think it's going to cause problems. I'm sure, I'm 68% cash. The rest of it is hedged. If we look at the markets last week, Friday to Friday, for the week ended October 1st, which was last Friday, remember they fell quite a bit on Thursday. So for the week, they were down 2.21%. And that means one of our portfolios should have lost $2,210. Our portfolios demonstrate mostly the largest stocks, and then we have the one that I ran. The top 30, which is the top 30 stocks, but capitalization weighted, instead of losing 2,200, lost 2,600. The top 30 equal weight, instead of losing 2,200, only lost 1,900. The top 3 every sector, which is all 11 sectors in the S&P top 3 stocks, instead of losing 2,200, only lost 1,500. My portfolio, because I only have 13 stocks in it, only lost $860. My hedges made up $816, so I lost $50 net for the week. The list of stocks is interesting, and this has all changed, but this is, in between the drop yesterday and then the recovery today and the slaughter in the tech stocks yesterday and all that. So this has already changed, but I'm going to go ahead and read it. So this is for the week ended last Friday. 9 stocks gained. First off, we have 54 stocks broadly that we follow. 40 were down, 14 were up. This is for last week. 9 stocks were up above 1%. That's it. 9 out of the 50. And those were Comcast rising 1.7%, Boeing Aircraft rising 2.1%, Bank America rising 2.2%, Kinder Morgan rising 2.3%, JP Morgan rising 2.5%, Netflix up 3.5%, Chevron up 3.7%, Exxon up 5.8%, ConocoPhillips up 7.8%. So energy companies did real well, which is bad for us because that means the price of gas is going up. All right, which means inflation. All right, but anyway, 5 companies went up, but up less than 1%. 5 companies went down, but down less than 1%. 5 companies went down in between 1 and 2%. Remember, we started the up list at 1%. 11 companies went down in between 2%, but less than 3%. 4 companies went down in between 3%, but less than 4%. 7 companies went down more than 4%, but less than 5%. And 8 full companies fell more than 5% last week from our list of 54, which is 10%. Okay. Target fell 5.4%. S&P Global fell 5.5%. American Tower fell 5.5%. Philip Morris fell 5.6%. Abbott Laboratories fell 5.8%. NVIDIA fell 6.1%. Thermo Fisher fell 6.1%. And Adobe fell 7.3%. Please notice, again, for the second week in a row, that the largest stocks, Apple, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Facebook, Tesla, Berkshire Hathaway, Visa, NVIDIA, JP Morgan, Johnson & Johnson, etc., are not in the list. Okay. Where they are, Facebook for the week ended last week, and they got slaughtered yesterday, down like 4% or something. But Facebook for last week fell 2.8%. Apple fell 2.9%. Microsoft fell 3.4%. Google fell 4% exactly. And Amazon fell 4.2% exactly. And that's what's responsible for the market diminution. I'm not sure I have a lot to add. Just reiterate that I think we have to get rid of it's coming to the point of self-preservation. All right. They don't know what to do. They don't have an agenda. They don't have a party. All they do is go from crisis to crisis, delegate to experts. The experts line their pockets and totally screw things up. You know, I can't tell you how disappointing it is that this vaccine conveys no immunity. None. That's a colossal failure. It really is. You know, I mean, the vaccine doesn't work. It doesn't convey immunity. And what do? They change the definition of a vaccine to take out the requirement that it convey immunity. You know, when you get a smallpox vaccine or a chicken, you know, these things that they inject babies with, and I think it's too many, but let's say smallpox or polio, two very, very useful vaccines that nobody has any disagreement with. You don't have to get one every 6 months. You get a shot and you are immune from the disease. Anyway, and they keep doing it. They don't know what to do. Anything that comes up, they fob off on the experts. Then the self-styled experts like Miss Warren, who don't want Powell to be renominated, and which is fine, you know, but who is the nominee? If you're going to ditch this guy, who is it? What's his or her policies? We really need to know. You forced us into the stock market. I can't lose 20% of my retirement savings. So I'd appreciate some clarity. Anyway, that's it for me today. It's Tuesday, as always. Bogdanich Perspective, available on TalkCast PDX. It'll be interesting, the politics in the market. Again, I'm earnings season and whatnot. Let's see what happens. Join me again next Tuesday. And thank you for listening. And do Virginia. That means goodbye.